Welcome to Revive Mercy Podcast. This month's theme is healing our communities, which dives into some of the questions like, how can I help? Whether you are a caretaker or someone who's suffering, I've seen strong communities be something that, is usually more effective when it's the focus is on uh, knowing the community itself also, and the focus is on towards healing. But that's simply said. I just remember a comedian, actually it's John Mulaney. I loved what he said in one of his stand-ups. He said, I used to be the mayor of nothing. I like to encourage a lot of my clients, the people I work with, even myself, that don't be the mayor of nothing. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. When I was struggling with my condition, and I still am, I spent countless hours trying to make people understand what I was going through, and I felt more like a burden. At the same time, I had to reframe and accept that the fact is, it does not require for others to understand to get the support I needed. Today, I just want to, we have a new guest. Her name is Clarissa. Burt? Am I saying that right?
You said it perfectly.
There you go. Thank you for so much for coming on, just sharing your insight. That's having a conversation. This whole podcast is really about continuing the conversation, and I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, I just love to be here. It's I loved your intro. Is amazing. Healing communities is paramount to who we are, how we grow. How we interact. How we show up, and who we show up for. It's really it's a beautiful show.
I just love how you can unpack it so many ways. It's like I can have this conversation with you, have another person podcast, and it'll be a totally different experience because communities are different, priorities are different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Before we begin in the States, I just want to share, if you are in the States, 988 is a suicide crisis lifeline. I do encourage you, if you are thinking about hurting yourself, or you're just struggling, you don't know how to help someone, but they have thoughts or they have a plan, I do encourage you to call this number, get the help you need. Obviously, we always think, I don't want to put a burden. Well, let's try to get the help you need, and then we'll work on what's next.
No shame.
No shame.
No blame. Give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Life is a beautiful thing, and sometimes it doesn't always feel that way, but reach out. And here's what I want to say about that, Robert. A couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, there was Anand Murthy is his last name, and he was the general. Oh gosh, I can't even remember now. I wanted to get there so strongly. But he part of the government as far as health is concerned. A couple of years ago, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he came out and he said, we've got a youth mental health crisis going on in this country, with about 45 to 50% of our youth that is either thinking of taking their lives or have taken their lives, and this is due to depression and anxiety and the bullying and things that are happening, and they don't know who to turn to. And with social media, it absolutely turned everything on its head. Today, and of course, we know about our veterans, the 22 a day. It's an alarming statistic, and it's another statistic that we really need for more people to be keeping their ear to the ground and keeping close to the veterans to make sure that they're getting the mental health help that they need. Men have now, as far as ideating, suicide, or I think today they say unaliving, themselves. I'm old school, so, but suicide rates now, it's at the top of the list are men. And this is a new statistic post-COVID that is really scary. It's really alarming because men don't reach out. I often say, I can get on a plane in Los Angeles. By the time I get to New York, if I'm sitting next to a woman, I will know her life, her struggles, her name, her last name, her maiden name, the name of all her kids, her dogs, her cats. I know everything about that woman by the time I get to New York. And we bestied the entire way there. Guys just have more difficulty opening up that way. And therefore, I often, I'm always available to speak to anybody that would like to talk, but guys really need to be looking out for guys and make it okay to reach out and say, hey man, I need to talk to you. Can we go have a beer? Can we just have a cup of coffee? Can we sit down? You meet me at Starbucks. I got to get some stuff off my chest, and make that okay. Really accept that as the new reality for guys to be able to, I need to cry. I need to talk.
Yeah, I totally, being a service member myself, I served in the U.S. Air Force in 2000 to 2004. We have always this jokes. In the military, it's always jokes. Air Force, we could color in the lines.
Right.
Army could kind of color within the lines, and we just hope the Marines don't eat the crayons. That's how we used to say things. But
You guys are so fun. The way you bust on each other is so cute. But there's a lot of underlying pain. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and at the end of the day, you're right. It's a lot more complicated, and I do feel social media. We're on our phones, like as much as I didn't like interpersonal conflicts.
Yeah.
When I have a phone, I could pretend I'm the most important person, so busy at everything. We never get practice of it, and I think
it's fun. There was something that I can't remember this saying either. Give me a minute while I try to figure this one out. You when you're sitting in a room with someone else and you're on their phone and they're on your phone, you're closer to the person that's on the other side of the world if you're texting than you are the person sitting next to you on the couch. Yeah. Which is really, kind of scary. And I think we have to also call home families, mom, dad. Look, I've never had children. I cannot get on a pulpit and preach. But what I can offer is, dinner time. Let's just at least have that 1 hour, where everybody's in the kitchen. You cut the celery. I'll, fry the chicken. All the phones are still in our, somewhere else, nowhere in sight. And let's really, connect in that way. And I think if we get back to the kitchen table, like we did when we were kids, that's where we communicated the most and had a ball doing it, So I hate to see us so much on those devices because we truly are losing ourselves.
I think it's impacting more as we continue to realize it. And sometimes it's not that I never would say it's too late, but it's hard. It's hard work to start out and realize you've been basically avoiding any obstacle socially because you've been on the phone, avoiding everything in front of you.
Listen, let's face it, parenting is hard work.
Yeah.
But, being a kid isn't easy either, and so especially in these times. I mean, I remember, when I was a girl in high school, I used to arrive with a horse and carriage. I'm kidding. But, when I was a kid in high school, there really wasn't that much in the way of bullying. I don't remember it that much. I guess there were a couple of them that were around and whatever. But today, it's the whole class, just against one kid. They single somebody out and then they just make their life hell.
Yeah,
and kids,
I just think it's also that we don't get freedom from it. Like when I was in school and it was, we had, the most advanced thing was pagers later on.
Yeah.
And we did and so for me it was like if there was a person I didn't like, when school's over, I don't see them. I don't hear from them because we didn't have that access. So there's something about that also. But I do like that it's I just think it's not so much like the technology, it's more about how we use it, and I just don't think we realize how much we are using it.
Yeah, let's get back to bullying a second. The bullies in the class, and I wrote a book about self-esteem. It's called The Self-Esteem Regime. And the bullies in the class are the ones with the least self-esteem. Yeah. They're the ones that have to, they're making a lot of noise and making somebody else feel really horrible to make themselves feel better and look really big, like the big man on campus or the big girl on campus in front of all the friends, right? But they are always the ones that have the lowest self-esteem. So I think that if you are, a bully, take that into mind. And if you are being bullied, take that to mind. It's like, wow, okay, sorry for you that you don't feel like good about yourself. How can I help? Take a high road on something like that. And don't, take the high road. Get the help you need. You might need some help out, of that kind of situation. But, unfortunately, it's another part of the human condition, I think, to the bullying has been around since, day one. So not much we can do about it except not play into it.
Yeah. And, I do agree. Just if there was a way, because I think with bullying, unfortunately, on some side of those bullying is a person who's, not getting the needs they have at their environment at home. And sometimes, unfortunately, the line of work I do, I have to do a DCF report, and those things are tough because the fact of the matter is the kid, a lot of times, if the person doesn't get any attention at home and the only way they feel it can is doesn't matter if they get in trouble. So you kind of see that. So in all angles, I just wish if there's a way to be more of a community. We're talking about communities that can just not just dualistically say this is a
Yeah,
bad kid, this is a good kid. A lot of times it's just more complicated like that when we think about communities.
yeah,
Especially
yeah,
that young age. They don't like. No one has the time to hate someone that much. Like it
yeah.
really, if you have, it's so much energy to have that hate. Usually, there's undercurrent of what's
There is
going
there
on.
was a social there's something went around on social media. Oh God, it must have been 5 days ago. I picked it up about a week ago on TikTok. And there's this one guy I follow pretty much, and he said, "Guys, I got to tell you something." And he's a gay guy, and so
Mm,
bullied. You can imagine how much
yeah.
bullying went on back in the day. And he said, "I got to tell you something." He says, and this blew my mind. It was you could see that it was really something that he was kind of filling up about it. Like he was really feeling this message he was giving out. And he said, I got a phone call. I got a message
Hmm.
from the guy in school that used to bully me to the nth degree. This guy made my life hell.
Hmm.
And he reached out to me here on my account on TikTok and told me, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you. And I know that I really hurt you. And I want to let you know how sorry I am about that and how proud I am of your success." Wow. Talk about a 360 moment.
Yeah.
And so again, going back to, an apology is never something you need to be, ashamed of. It's probably one of the biggest, gestures, the greatest gestures
Mm-hmm.
as a mature human you
Mm-hmm.
will ever do. And so I was really happy for both of them. The guy that, said, "I'm really sorry that I did that. I realize it. And will you forgive me?" And this other guy's gone, "Oh man, I can't believe you reached out to me this way. Yes, I forgive you. And thank you so much. Because
Yeah.
you did make my life hell." So, before you open your mouth and you start bullying somebody and hurting someone, just understand the ramifications. Like there's a heart beating in their chest.
Hmm.
Right. And so anyway, there you go.
Yeah, and I, I really agree that sometimes the biggest thing that we need to do as adults or those who are bullying is to ask if you actually need help. Like that's the
Yes.
hardest thing to ask. Like you may not like, and that's one thing I think a
Yep.
community could do well. Safe places,
Well, it's
safe
scary.
space. Yeah.
Yep. It's scary
That
to be vulnerable like that.
yeah, it's scary to be vulnerable. Scary to ask for help. There's
Yep.
a lot of, but at the same time, never. I don't like when it becomes so contrasting, so extreme. Like this person
Mhm.
is completely bad. This person is completely. I just feel we're just humans, and unfortunately, we may have a hard life. We may have uh, we may not get our needs met. And I think right now,
Yeah.
if a community could do a better job of fostering a safe place where we can talk about that and
Yeah.
actually get that addressed, obviously, I think that will improve a lot of aspects. And
I think
I
another
want.
thing to say, usually when somebody doesn't like you, it's either because they see you as a threat,
Mm,
they hate themselves,
mm,
or they would like to be more like you.
yeah.
Right. So again, all of the, I know that for, an 8-year-old kid or a 10-year-old kid, all this is a little bit much to take in and to
Yeah.
think, oh, I got to think of that. Maybe he thinks I'm a threat, but maybe to be able to, as adults, pass that on to your children and say, "Hey, listen, if he's bullying you, these could be the reasons why. Let me help you out. Let's get this situation under control." But there are real reasons, like you said, the people they're acting out that way do need, they need some help. They need
Yeah.
some attention, some help.
This one quote stood about like last month I used it, but I thought it was unique. It's from Angela Duckworth, and she says, "Enthusiasm is common, endurance is rare. We have a shorter attention span. We are
Yeah.
quick to go, and we're like a lot of times it's I feel that this quote really meant something to me. I want to hear from you what you think, but just a little short context. Last month was difficult for me. I'll just share. Reschedule a lot, and I don't like rescheduling my recordings.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about this quote and its relevance for this, and how it impacted how I thought about it now. And life happens, and sometimes enthusiasm fades. We have to be honest, but
Yeah.
endurance
Oh
I
yeah.
have, and you kind of endurance shows purpose, shows that and that unfortunately is rare because it's like the delayed gratification. Like I doing this because this matters to me, and kind of looking inward of what that is.
Mhm.
Enthusiasm. Sometimes we only hold on to enthusiasm. We hold on to validation, and sometimes you don't get that. A lot of times outside, and then you could
Yep.
be bitter. You could say, what's the point?
Right.
But you forget the reason. I remember when I was in college, some of my classmates would be like, "Robert, you could talk to anyone." I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, "What do you mean I could talk to anyone?" I didn't know what that meant, and I feel
Mhm.
it's that I could connect. I really like connecting, and then I remember last month was hard. And I'm like, man, you kind of put so much on yourself. But then I said, though I wanted to record more last month, I took care of myself.
Right.
I
Self-care
didn't.
is so important. It's
So like
so
even though
important.
even though
Yeah.
I'm like that person, it's funny. Like
Mm.
at work, you
Yeah.
know, people are like, they're always astounded. I'm just always go go go. But at the same
And
time, if
sometimes
you're
just
not,
give yourself grace. You don't need permission. Give yourself grace. I didn't,
mm,
I didn't feel I could for whatever reason it didn't happen. Here
mm,
I am now, and it's all good. I
uh,
mean, I
uh,
think it's where
and
you
for,
always are where you're supposed to be in any given moment, right?
and the reason I'm sharing this because I feel it really goes with how we see ourselves in the community. That I can actually say my self worth is enough for me
Right.
to take care of myself. I'm not going to be 100%, and
Right.
that's okay.
Yep.
And enthusiasm is expected to fade here and there. You have hard days, you have those moments, but at the same time, we are only human. And if you're honest with how you feel, you work through that. That was very helpful for me.
Right.
Looking at this quote, enthusiasm is common.
And
You
enjoy
know,
prayer. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that, yeah. So, any
Let me
thoughts
tell
when
you
you see
something
this
about
quote?
enough. Okay, so we hear I am enough, you are enough. I don't feel like I'm enough. I'm never enough. But
Mhm.
so there's a lot of that. The mantra I am enough in order to pump oneself up because they really are feeling lack, right? Or they're
Mhm.
living in lack. And so I looked up one day the definition of enough,
Mhm.
and the definition of enough is only as much as is required.
Yeah.
So just by pure definition, the definition of enough isn't enough.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so what I then decided was the new mantra was going to be, I am so much more than enough. I am so much more than enough. Right? Because we're constantly thinking that we're not enough. And that word in itself, I just, completely debunked it and made it something completely, like it was just a useless word. I'm so much more. I
Mhm.
could finish the sentence right there. I am so much more.
Mhm.
But then enough sort of, it sort of brings that again. It brings it right around, and it makes a world of sense. We talk about a lot of times, the Joneses, which is along the same
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
Joneses, right? The Joneses, the grass is always greener on the other side. Well, here's a couple of thoughts for you. Is the grass really greener on the other side, or is the grass always greener where you water it?
Yeah.
So self-care,
Mhm.
bring it back home, worry about yourself. What other people think about me is none of my business. I need to be worried about my business. And by the way, I'm thrilled. Oh, here's the other thing. Is the grass always greener on the other side, or is it astroturf?
Mhm. Yeah.
Is it fake? Is it not real? Is it perception? Right. And by the way, again, if the Joneses are doing really, really well, I have enough emotional intelligence to say, I'm so happy for them. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
great job, Joneses. That's really good. Good on you. Now let me bring it back home because I've got, still here working on myself. We're all work in progress, by the way.
Mhm.
Until the
Yeah.
day the angels call us home, we are always going to be a work in progress. So
Yeah.
let's just bring it in. Let's bring it home. Let's work on ourselves. Robert, when I was a kid, there were only, apart from the fact there were only 3 television stations when I was very little, but there were 3 bookstores. It was Walden Books, Borders Books, and Barnes and Noble.
Mhm.
And when I was a young girl, in search of and looking for, the reason why, assistance, guidance, all of the things, there was a little section in all the bookstores way in the back called self-help. And
Mhm.
on those bookshelves, we might have seen, if you were lucky, there were 40, 50 books on those bookshelves. It's a
Mhm.
very small section.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to say that my book, The Self-Esteem Regime, is in Barnes and Noble. It has
Mhm.
been for 5 years. It's in the personal development section, and it is now rows upon rows upon rows upon rows upon rows of a personal development section that is $1 billion industry. It
Mhm.
just goes back to prove how we are always looking for, guidance, for help, for support, for, again, the reason why or a way out.
Yeah.
So we're all in the same boat, everybody. We're all going, some a little more, some a little less. And a lot of it depends on your first 5 or 10 years. Who were your parents? What were you taught? What did what were you taught that they told you was etched in marble and it really kind of wasn't, all the things you can kind of, so when you start to create, my first chapter is release. And by the way, every chapter is 12 chapters. Every chapter begins with a word. So the first one is release, and that is, unlearning what you've been taught. Some of the things you may have been taught that aren't serving you. And the second one is rebuild. So yay, now we get to build the life that we want to build for us. We thank everybody. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. I'll be home. See you Christmas. Be home for Thanksgiving. All the things. I'll talk to you a couple times a week, but it doesn't necessarily mean, and sometimes, people's noses are going to get out of joint, but if it's not working for you, it's not working for you. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, especially working in the mental health field, I would have, every single time I end like the meeting, I would say, is that okay with you? And some of them were like, why would you ask me? You're always here. You're the only one who talks to me about this. Yeah. And I say, who's the last person who said that to you? Right. And they don't remember. Sometimes so a lot of times when I think of Carl Jung, the biggest thing he really pointed out with loneliness is really about, not obviously we talk about proximity doesn't matter. Really it's about feeling that what's important to you is heard. So what is important to you? If it is heard, you feel less lonely. So if someone listens to you, even if you're like 16, you're like you and the adults like thinking this is not really a big problem. Yeah. If you listen to them, just take a moment and understand that you were 16 one time, you were 1 times 15, and these were big things.
It was yesterday, by the way. I was 16 yesterday. Actually, I was 16 50 years ago because I'm 66 now. But, the most important thing is to, continually advocating for yourself so that your self-improvement, your self-betterment, your self-awareness, your self-confidence. Confidence is, I think really key in all of this because it's going to take some work, and the work is not always going to be easy. And, confidence is I lived in Italy for 30 years. So forgive me if every once in a while I break out my Italian root, but, self-confidence, confidence is confidere, which means trust in self. And so that's what it is. You get to the point where no matter where you go, no matter what room you walk into, no matter what speech you're giving, no matter what interview you're walking into, no matter what dating scenario you might, showing up for a coffee with someone, you really are feeling very confident about the work that you have done because you have done the work, the personal development work, the self-esteem work, the self-improvement work. And it's done by picking up books like mine at Barnes & Noble. There are meetup groups, there's, documentaries, there's courses, there are classes, you can get even on Udemy and Coursera. I think that, there's everywhere you go. If you want to learn, okay, I'm not really sure what the next step is. I just know that what I'm doing isn't working. What it's out there. It wasn't, I had 3 bookstores in a little, in the back, way in the back. It's like today there really is, I'm not going to say no excuse because there are many different reasons why people, might have difficulty moving forward, or feeling that they, some people don't even know they have to move, forward or learn to do better. And that's in a whole nother show.
Yeah. And like, I also, a lot of times, we're talking about, the bullies before, we talk about confidence, self-confidence. Confidence is, I a lot of times find there has to be balance in the sense that as much as I want to be like recognized for the accomplishments I make, I also have to be equally accountable for the accomplishments, the things I've done wrong. Right. If we have that balance, it just feels there's a homeostasis in sense, like everything's working fluid. But if I'm like, even though I may have good achievements, but I'm unwilling to see that I've done things that are not done well, that's where there's imbalance. And I think that's where arrogance feels to come out more than confidence. And confidence is a balance in a sense. I feel.
Yeah, the third chapter is responsibility, and I think that's where we're kind of going here. Is it's like take the responsibility for what you've done. We're not looking in the rearview mirror, so you're not going back that way. But just take the responsibility. You know what you've done now. You're moving forward. So look through the windshield. Where are we going? Where are you taking your life? Because the mistakes that we've made in the past, and God knows, we've all made them. You don't get off of this planet without, right? So, don't dwell on it too much. Learn from it. And move forward. I think, it's probably the most important thing we can say there is like, don't be dwelling on stuff like that, because that's not going to help you.
Yeah. A lot of times, just even stepping back and asking yourself, how is this thought, this negative thought, how has this been helping me so far? It usually doesn't. I want to switch gears and just a lot of times with new guests and returning guests, I'd like to know, and obviously my listeners to know a little bit more about yourself. Obviously you're new, so I want to give you the floor to kind of share what brought you to do what you're doing, and the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Well, my whole life basically was either on a stage or with a microphone in some way, shape, or form. I was Mary Poppins in the kindergarten play. Yay. Yay me. And then, some years later, I really, I started to model, and then I acted, and then, I started to work as on-camera talent, and then I started to produce. So for me, the medium of media has been basically in my life for a really long time. But it was really clear to me that, first of all, I think I'm very empathic, so I have a really difficult time seeing people suffer. And, my home background was one in which people suffered. And so that was really the kickoff. That was the beginning. Then it was my mother and my grandmother. Young girls, you guys look up to your dads, young girls look up to their moms and grandmothers. And both of them, whereas I adore both of them, obviously had problems with self-esteem. I'm going to show you a picture of Mom, just so you can see. And my mother, I think you would agree, is a lovely looking woman. That was me, obviously. Yeah. That's when I was Mary Poppins. But there's Mom. And Mom was, a lovely, don't take a picture of me. I come out horrible in pictures. Don't ever take a picture of me. Okay, Mom. My grandmother, beautiful. I don't have the picture, but if I showed you, you'd agree. Grandmother, beautiful lady. At a certain point, I don't know, she's in her 40s or 50s. She takes 2 diet pills, chokes on them, perforates her esophagus, and winds up in the hospital for 6 weeks. And believe me, Robert, she didn't need to lose an ounce. Yeah. So I'm looking at these women who, and I said, Mom, you're so smart. Oh, come on now. I'm not smart. I'm not smart at all. So there was always this, sort of, I saw, my perception of was so completely different than their perception of themselves. Right. Yeah. Fast forward, now my modeling career takes me to be working with the top 1% of the models in the world. And I was on, all the important runways. I came home with 250 magazine covers. I had beauty campaigns. And so again, working with the women that were some of the most beautiful creatures in the world was, elbow to elbow, right?
Yeah.
And it was very clear that a lot of these girls, not all of them, obviously, but many of these girls, drinking, drugging, toxic relationships, just you're kind of like, yes, were we all going through things in our younger years trying to figure ourselves out? Yes. But it just, it sort of was feeling like, gee, a little bit of lack of self-esteem. Yeah. So where was the connection between Mom and Grandmom in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and these, 1%ers around the world? Well, there you go. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, age, creed, race, doesn't matter. Nobody gets off of this planet without at least one day of having a bad day with your self-esteem. So, that's one of the main reasons some of the main reasons I wanted to write the book. And I'm thrilled I did, because I'm really proud of the book. And by the way, you're not going to read about self-esteem. These are 12 chapters where you're going to get in and do the work. Like, as I said, the first chapter, it's release. Second chapter, you're going to rebuild. The third chapter, it's responsibility. The last chapter is reciprocity. Because that was another one that was really hard for me. It was like, I would do a lot, but it was really hard for me to accept. Right. Because I was prevaricating a lot of times, or I was a control freak or what. So I really had to, sort of soften the edges a little bit so that others were able to do for me. So, yeah, lots of learning went on when I was researching this book. And it was really very liberating.
I just want to share to those who are listening that where to find the book, where to, check it out. I encourage you to do. Be in the notes.
I'll show you real quick. The Self-Esteem Regime. There it is, what she looks like. in the Barnes and Noble stores, everywhere on Amazon. So Kindle, Audible, and in every major, all the countries, I think, where Amazon is where you can find it. So wherever we're listening from, it's there. The Self-Esteem Regime.
I am always encouraged when people find something that was a hardship, maybe for a family member or themselves, and they turn it around to be something that's positive for other people. Like for me, even just sharing that story, that short story of not being able to record last month, I want people to know it's okay, that you don't have to be okay. I know that's really, it's okay. And I would say it's, a lot of times, saying yes to everything, maybe you may need to say no. Maybe you have to say yes to you, not no to other people, to take care of yourself. This is a very, it's radical, because a lot of times we've been told you have to be nice. Nice is so vague. What does nice really mean? How about be kinder to yourself? You made some bad choices, you made some good ones, but nothing's really certain. But at the same time, you have choices. And I do appreciate people like you who are making the effort to share their knowledge, to help people kind of see that, it's not either or. There might be a third option we're right in front of us that we don't see. A lot of times, you mentioned being creative. Like, I find a lot of times I try to encourage my clients to be creative in their coping. You talk about coping skills. I would say creativity is probably the best one, because it caters to your character, how you can really decompress through a day.
Yeah. Love it. Love all that.
I want to ask you, as we kind of march through, in what ways have you seen communities improve or not improve today? What are barriers that you see that cause issues in our community?
I think first of all, it's, when we talk about community, I think a lot of what we're talking about is online and social media. Number one, if you can, get off of it, go out, be personal, be in the same room, be on the same hike, be on, the same setting, be back together again. It's really important that we don't forget that we are human beings, especially now with in the age now of AI. We're really going into uncharted territory. It's really going to get scary real fast. And I know that because I've been following some seminars and conferences on AI. And it's going to start to get really scary really fast. So the faster we remember that we are human beings and we need to be connecting in that way much more than we have been, I think that's a great place to start. If we are online, however, I do think that we need to just be finding the places where we can elevate one another, get off the damn gaming, go to a meetup or get into things that are actually, that can teach you something. Again, if it's online, you get yourself into a community of, Udemy, Coursera, all the different places where, they're actually teaching things, I think is always a great place to be. But I'm always one for, social media is great. There's a lot of good to it. It's done a lot of good, but it's also done a lot of bad. So let's get back into common spaces and, common areas and be human beings again,
Yeah. I always kind of ask, when I'm working with someone who's maybe their environment's not very good, or they've been kind of going back to a bad environment, is if something good happened to you, I'm telling the person, would they be happy for you?
Yes, exactly.
Because a lot of times when you're in a bad environment, they want you to stay small. They want you to be small, and convenient, and put your needs to the side. And loyalty doesn't mean self-neglect. Loyalty needs to be earned. Trust needs to be earned. These kind of things.
Well, loyalty is when I've got your back behind your back. That's really loyalty. But what you're talking about is the tribe and how they'll try to pull you back and keep you down. That's chapter 1. Remember when I talked about what was taught, what was you think was written in stone, and all the different things. And by the way, this can be with friends. It could even be with faith.
Now, of course, I would say that. I would say that strongly.
Yes. So, and when I said you're going to need courage, you're going to need the courage. And I remember I talked about those noses getting out of joint. Some people are going to take your growth is going to remind them of how stagnant their life is. And that's going to irk them. That's not going to make them happy. So don't forget that it's so your growth is an amazing thing. Go for it. You've got all my support, but don't let them pull you back down. If they get angry, nose out of joint, that's on them. It's not on you. It's all going to work out fine. But let them. And we're not all. Here's the thing: we are not all on the same growth path.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get married real young. That they don't realize that within 10 years you're starting to grow differently, or you're starting to grow. Somebody is. I like things status quo. Well, this other one wants to get out and kind of break out and so I think you get the point. It's just not. We don't all grow in the same way, or in the same direction, and that's a huge piece, especially the relationships.
And that's why, going back, communication is always so key. So
Yep.
like communicating, a lot of times the need could be so basic. I feel left out. And
Yeah.
if you just kind of let that fester in a relationship, it can really do a lot of damage. And the person doesn't
Yes,
feel
sir.
heard.
That's right.
The person feels lonely because what they think is important is not heard. And just like, and we're like mirrors, like you're describing when when we're doing well, we're like mirrors to those who are really struggling. So they don't really, you'll get resistant.
Yeah.
I remember reading this one book. It was kind of interesting. Like, I go out, and it sounds negative, but I don't really feel it is. I expect people to disrespect me. I expect people to, I guess, underestimate me. At the same time, underestimate me. And I expect people to, be on the surface. But when someone is nice to me, I am especially happy. So like I value those communication. I value those friendships. So I could be, I think, it's okay to kind of put those boundaries of what you do like or not like. And time is a commodity that I feel when we talk about self-respect, it's always kind of thrown to the side. Like, we talk about easier. Sometimes a lot of times the best things we do are hard. A lot of times the best work we do is slow.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how we're trying to go fast.
Yeah.
We're trying to get all this stuff quickly because of time, but we don't really value it a lot of times when we think about our communities and our own
Absolutely.
stuff.
Absolutely. So. Boundaries are huge, by the way. Boundaries are, it's our way of teaching others how we will and will not be treated, basically. And that's where you got to stand up for yourself. You've got to be able to say, and you don't have to like be angry. It doesn't have to be an angsty kind of thing. You be, hey, listen, can we talk a second? Mm-hmm. What you just did, what you just said, kind of hurt my feelings. Can I explain why? And if somebody comes back to you and says, "Oh, I'm really so sorry. Oh, I didn't mean it that way. Gosh, I feel horrible." No harm, no foul, no big deal. I'll just just let you know. Thank you for listening and understanding. Thank you for telling me it will never happen again. Let's go get a coffee. We're good. Yeah. But if someone goes back to you and says, "Oh, come on, get over yourself. What the heck? You're always so sensitive. What the? I was just joking, for God's sake." You might have a little bit of a toxic relationship going on there. Yeah. And so be careful that the toxicity. One of my mantras is the toxic stops here. And so, whereas I'm human and imperfect, I do the best that I can on any given day to be a better person tomorrow than I was yesterday. That's kind of what I really, it could be, big things, little things, not everything is broad strokes. Sometimes it's holding the door open for somebody with a compliment, or, it's not every day gives me the opportunity to, but it's always top of mind that I want to do the right thing or say the right thing.
Yeah. I was leave this one quote and then get your final thoughts. This one quote is from David Spangler. It kind of speaks what we're saying. Some people think that they are in a community, but they're only in proximity. True community requires commitment and openness. That's a hard thing for people, especially in the male community. Yep. It is a willingness to extend yourself to encounter and know the other. So, that's right. And it's hard when we have this. Is either you agree with me or don't. So there's a barrier right there. I could have different values and ideas that you might like. I don't really agree with that, and that's totally fine. But if you're not fine with it, this gets really hard to know each other, because then you're like, oh, I can't go further. I think if we remember ourselves, we have context that may have bridged us to that idea. Doesn't make that person bad or good or or dumb or anything like that. It just means that that's what they believe.
Right.
In. And if we're considerate to them and we're kind to them, this is where I think a lot of wonderful things can happen when it comes to community.
Yeah, I mean, another thing is, as I was trying to intimating before, we're all so different, and let's, can we just continue to celebrate, how different we all are, and
Yeah.
wouldn't it be a really boring world if there were, 8 billion of the same, person? I mean, so I can you imagine like that would be like a horrible, horrible thing. I think that the idea that that we just need to be kinder straight up,
Yeah.
and be reminded that we're not all the same, and some people like you and I, we have no problem communicating, no problem walking in a room and being the best friends with everybody in that room by the time the night is over. And some people just don't have that. It's just they're just wired differently. It's all the way we're wired. It's nothing more than that. And some people may need a little bit more of a nudge, and it's on some people like us to say, "Oh, I see that person on the other side of the room. They look like maybe they could use somebody to talk to," and you make that gesture. Again, it's a win-win. You feel good about doing it; they feel good because you walked over. So at least you hope they do. You hope they do.
I think it's an ongoing thing, and I feel even if it is uncomfortable, it's supposed to be. Sometimes it is uncomfortable. If you
Sure.
expect socializing is like it can be cringy. It can
Yeah.
feel weird,
Yeah,
and
it can.
yeah, and that's okay. Honestly, and I feel it's like dipping your toes into the water, and you never like you're not afraid to get in. Eventually, you just have to jump in
I
and
know.
really get into it because when you avoid it, when instead of going to the pool, you're looking at your phone on the side, you'll never learn how to swim. You'll never learn
Yeah,
these kind of
right.
skills. So I want to
Absolutely.
say thank you so much for coming on. Any final thoughts thinking about, what we've talked about or anything that you want to mention that we haven't
Yeah,
talked about?
I think we need to give ourselves grace. I think we, a lot of times, we have to start thinking about what we're thinking about. I think that's really key. Like what, sometimes I catch myself and I go, whoop, wait a minute, hold on. I'm not going down that path, because there are times when I'll go on social media and I'll see some things and I can feel it, like
Yeah.
no, something coming, and I go, whoop, nope, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Remember that we are born imperfect, and that we are always a work in progress. So again, a little bit of grace, a little bit of love for ourselves, and also
Kindness. Go ahead. Sorry.
if you feel this okay, if you feel like a lot of times, I just man, I just don't fit in. I just, really, well, if you don't fit in, maybe it's because you were meant to stand out.
Hmm.
So let's see about that. 3 choices we have in life. We can give up, we can give it in, or we can give it all we got.
Mhm.
So where are we on that? I think that's really important too. Like I think that's all kind of important stuff. Those are the 3 things I can leave you with.
Yeah, and I just, I feel when you mentioned your empath, I feel I have some of that. So like when I walk in the room, you could feel. In Korean, they call it nunchi. When it's called the ability to kind of know, because I'm half Korean, my mom's Korean.
Oh, okay.
So you kind of feel if someone's upset,
Right.
but at the same time, judging, knowing my context, and my final thought is know who you are. So if I know that I'm going to be disruptive, do the work that helps you. Don't be like, oh, this shouldn't be, I shouldn't have to go through this. I always measure the story. We talked about veterans before. Person comes back, maybe has a prosthetic, and they had to go work, and it takes longer for them to prepare to go to work. I always ask this to my clients, and they always go like, of course he's not less valued. I'm like, if he takes 40 more minutes to get ready to go to work because he wants to go to work, does that mean he's less? No. Then whatever you have to do, 30, 40 minutes that you have to do, if you feel that it's going to be a hard day, I would just suggest when it comes to healing our community, it starts with you. So start working on yourself, and then take that 30, 40 minutes if you know it's there, that you need it. So that's my thought.
Can I leave you just one more thing?
Yeah.
Okay. There are 4 things, and this is important. I think this is really good stuff. There are 4 things, Robert, that you can't get back in life.
Mm-hmm.
The word after it's been said,
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity after it's been missed,
Mm-hmm.
time after it's gone, and trust after it's lost.
Yeah.
So go out and do the right thing, everybody. Yeah. Tomorrow isn't promised. It's not. So let's get out there and do the right thing.
Thank you so much, Clarissa,
you,
and being on here and just having the chat. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
I remind those who are watching, listening, reviveministryfl.com caretakerhelp.com is our website. We're on YouTube too. I just want to say goodbye with this actual Native American proverb. It says, with all things and all things, we are relatives.
With all things and in all things,
Yeah,
we are relatives. With all things